Hi there, everyone, and welcome to Paper Wishes Weekly Webisodes. I'm Sara Newman, and I'm so happy you're joining me for this episode of Saturday with Sara. Today, I'm excited to show you a beautiful release from our friends at Arden Creative Studio called Remembering. We have 8x8 pattern papers, rub-ons, and coordinating die-cut ephemera. This collection is stunning. I think you're really going to like it. So let's take a closer look, and we can start with our paper pack. So here you have 24 sheets in total. You've got 2 each of 12 double-sided papers. And you can see the range here on the cover, but it's always fun to flip through and see the designs in more detail. So I've pulled out 1 sheet of each design and we can take a look through. Right away you'll notice these soft, beautiful muted colors, some of the poppy flowers in here, as well as some script and some faux letters, some old photos here in the background. Really pretty collage style. I like that you've got lots of all over basic patterns in here, as well as some corner treatments. You'll have a lot of vintage themed elements, from the butterflies and script to the locks and the keys and the timepieces. Really gorgeous designs, very thoughtfully coordinated, I think. You've got some faux newspaper, newsprint in the background here. And then we're going into another color palette here. You can see with the blues and the greens. And you've also got some additional themes. So from the airplanes to cooking and baking to voyages. And on the back side here, really pretty sheet music design. Here we've got some sewing elements. On the back side of this is a really pretty coordinating pink stripe. And then here we've got some postmarks and this really pretty brown faux texture design in the background. And then this is on the other side. So remember, you're getting 2 each of 12 double-sided papers here in this collection. And then to go along, there's a pack of coordinating rub-ons. Here you'll have 4 sheets, 2 each of 2 designs, so 2 of this and 2 of this. You've got some really useful background elements, as well as beautiful focal and accent images too. And you'll also have a craft stick, so it makes the application even easier. And of course, we'll show you how to do that. And then finally, we have a package of 100 ephemera die-cut elements. Now, when I flip this over, you'll see all of these different pieces that you have included in the pack. But I went ahead and pulled out some of them and put them onto a display board. I wanted you to be able to see the variety here. So lots of coordinating images like the flowers, keys, as well as frames. You'll have clocks, vintage airplanes, and lots of family-themed words. Great if you're making cards for family members or if you're making scrapbook pages too. So as you can see, we have a lot of beautiful supplies to work with today and play with today. Everything totally coordinated for easy card making and paper crafting projects. I'm really glad you're here, and I'm so excited to explore the creative possibilities with you. So come play with us. For our first card, I'm combining some of these gorgeous ephemera pieces together with the rub-ons and pattern papers, plus a quick and easy scalloped border that can be made using a rectangle cutting die. So let's have a closer look at these techniques, and we can begin with our card front and kind of work our way up. So I first covered the front of my card with this beautiful green pattern paper, and I'm using hot off the presses 5 by 6.5 inch blank cards. So these come with it pre-scored, which means that to cover the card front, all I need to do is add some adhesive around all 4 sides of the front panel. And then what I like to do is align the fold of the card with the edge of my paper. Simply smooth those 2 together, flip it over, and then use a pair of scissors to trim around the outside edge. And then I've got my card front easily covered with a gorgeous design, and I can add more elements from there. And so from here, I've added the rub on this really cool kind of gear collage design. I've got the entire piece added to the front of my card. And I really like adding rub-ons onto pattern paper. I think it really adds a nice layer of collage depth and dimension onto the front of your card. So that's what I've done over here on the side. And then I have a strip of floral paper. This measures about 3 inches wide. And this is the paper that I'm using for that. You can see how beautifully these two go together. And separating the two of those patterns here on my card is a really easy scalloped border. So I've got one on either side. And these are cut from plain white cardstock using one of my favorite dies. It's the 12 rectangles and scalloped cutting dies. So normally what you would do is cut your rectangle shapes and then you can layer them one on top of the other to create some really nice focal elements. But I like using the largest one for my borders. Now this is about 6.5 inches tall. And so what I do here is I just grab a piece of solid cardstock, and I'll use the green as my demo piece here, and simply align the edge, the long edge of my rectangle on the cardstock, secure it down with a little bit of low tack tape, and I like using Hunky Dory's tape for this. Run this through my die cutting machine, so it's only this little strip of cardstock. And then after I do, I will have a piece that looks like this. So I've just got the border, I've done 2 of those, and then I can add them to the back of my pattern paper. So if you take just this strip and secure it to the back, you've got a scalloped border ready to go. So I've die cut 2 of those, just again from plain white cardstock, and added one to either side of my floral paper before gluing it down to the front of my card. Now at the top here I've got some sheet music rub-ons. I think this again looks really pretty and helps to add a little bit of dimension to that pattern paper. Then from here I've added my ephemera, and I've got a frame die which I've layered onto some additional pattern paper, and this is the sheet that I've used. And of course you can see it's going to add a little bit of lightness to my all over design. So I've got that just behind the frame, and then I foam taped the frame to the front of the card and added this butterfly on top at an angle, also with some foam tape here. Now the word mother is an ephemera piece, but the pack includes so many relative themed words that you'll have plenty of choice. So for example, you could also put on here grandma, so that's in the same font, same color scheme, a little bit lighter green. You could also do a different style here with the word aunt. You could also give this to grandpa, and I really enjoy all of the different styles, the font styles as well as the frame styles on these. And then if you wanted to skip the relative themed words, you could also just add the word history on there. And I think that works nicely for this vintage theme. So you've got a lot of different options there, these plus even more in that ephemera pack. Then for my card inside, I have some more beautiful patterned paper, plus a combination, more word ephemera. So I've got this to spell out my hero. I've also got some button ephemera pieces on there to create a little grouping. And I've got a script dazzle greeting. So I love the script dazzles so much that I don't have very many left on this sheet, but I did want to point out to you, not only do you have the words, you also have some small accent pieces here, like this little heart. So I've added a heart on here, and then I've also pulled out a couple and incorporated them onto the front of my card as well. I love how beautifully the rub-ons integrate with the pattern papers as part of a card background. And I also think they're beautiful as focal images for cards, like with this card project here. So this card features a gorgeous large rub-on, which I've applied to a nested scalloped circle made with the 12 circle and scallop dies. So again, one of my other favorite sets here, lots of different options there with the sizes. And so here I've got a white circle with the smooth edge layered on top of the scalloped edge here. And I think it makes a really nice focal spotlight area, especially in combination with these pattern papers. So rub-ons are really easy to apply. They've really become one of my very favorite craft supplies. And of course, in this collection, you've got 2 sheets, not only with those beautiful backgrounds, but also with some of the spotlight images on there. And this is this beautiful large focal image that we've got on the front of our card here. So let's take a look at how to apply a rub-on. I'm going to bring in just a little snippet of patterned paper here, and then I've also got my leftover portion of one of my sheets of rub-ons. And let's have a look at how easy this is to do. So first of all, you're going to remove the image that you want to choose from your rub-on sheet. And there are 2 layers to the rub-on sheet. So you've got the sheet where the image is printed, and then you've got the liner sheet. So you want to hold those 2 together and then just snip out that image that you want with your scissors, and keeping those 2 sheets together. And then from here, what you'll do is kind of figure out where you want it to go on your paper or cardstock. So let's see here. I'm going to gently remove this and sort of position it where I think I might want it to go. Let's pop it down here. And then simply place that down. I like to fold up a little corner of that plastic piece, just so that I've got something to hang on to. But when I smooth this down, you'll notice that it's on there pretty nicely, so it's not going to go sliding around. Now from here, I can use the craft stick that's included in the rub-on pack to simply burnish this in place. So I'm going to use firm, even pressure and go around all of the outside of that image, as well as in the center. Now you can also use a bone folder for this. Both of the tools will work really nicely. So I'm just going to come around here and give it a final swoop. And then what I'll do is just gently and slowly pull up this top piece. And I do this gently and slowly because if I find that there's any area of the rub-on that has not transferred, I can simply put that back in place and continue. But it looks like I've got it all. And here is my rub-on all ready to be incorporated into my project. So it's super simple to do, and it really does create a beautiful effect without adding a lot of bulk to your project. So after I've die cut this piece into a circle, I matted it with foam tape onto the corresponding scalloped circle. My card base is covered with this gorgeous stripe paper, and this is one of my favorites from the collection. I think it's just a classic design. Before I glued it to the front of my card, though, I folded over the top corner so that I'm able to get the other portion of the design, which is on the back side of this sheet. So you'll simply trim off this top strip here and then add it to the front of your card. And I've also got a portion of the reverse side used as this border here. So when I flip this over, you can see that faux stitching is along the bottom. So I've positioned it so that I'm able to get this as the side border onto my card. And then I've used some of the ephemera buttons to add an accent piece here, along with this ephemera lace border piece. So it comes together really easily. So when I've folded this over, I've got some room here for another portion of pattern paper to show, and that's from this sheet here. So I've got some of this kind of note paper as well as this faux lace printed on there too. So easy to put together, and I love how all of the components really coordinate beautifully. And then the rub-on focal placed in the center, and I've got the butterfly ephemera piece overlapping between the two. There's a little bit of foam tape underneath this folded over corner so that I've got some dimension here. I have a lock ephemera piece here as well, and then the word ant. And I've got as a finishing touch a little bit of brown jute twine. Then for my card inside, I added more of the stripe paper with the stripes going horizontally, And I've used the other lace ephemera border, plus I've got the thank you dazzle. For our next card project, we've got a really fun combination, not only of the pattern paper and the ephemera, but also some die cutting and some stenciling here in the background. So for the focal, I've layered a piece of this pattern paper with the ephemera frame, and I'm using this portion of the paper design. Now, before I added my frame here, I did also put a little rub-on down here at the bottom corner, and it's this design here. So not only do I have that beautiful, elegant script, but also a little bit of shading. It almost looks like old parchment paper. So it adds another nice layer of texture onto our pattern paper. So on top of the rub-on, I've simply applied the frame with some foam tape. And again, that's going to give a little bit more dimension. Overlapping the frame are flowers and a butterfly, plus the mom ephemera word popped up on foam tape. And tucked underneath, I have some foliage, and this is from the Frosted Flowers cutting die set. So I like this one not only for the flowers, but also for the foliage on here. And I've die cut these two leaf elements from the green pattern paper. So again, giving a little bit more color and dimension on there. Then behind the focal, you'll notice a couple of rub-ons. I've got them top and bottom, corner to corner. And then even behind those, you'll see a patterned design on the pattern paper. And this has been done with some stenciling. So this is the pattern paper that I've covered my card front with. After I've covered the card with this pattern paper, then I did the stenciling on top. And I'm using the Elegant Doily stencil. This is a 6x6 design, and you can use the entire piece like Lene did for her project idea on the back. You can also use just portions, and that's what I've done here. So just one portion of the doily over here and one over here. It's a really easy process to do, so let's take a look. I'm going to move aside my card and just bring in a piece of plain white cardstock here. I am working onto my craft mat. That's just going to save my table from the ink that I'll be applying. And I've got my stencil here as well. A couple of other things I need to have on hand. The ink, and the color I'm using is mustard, and this is a Hunky Dory dye-based ink pad. I will also need my blending brush, and this is what I'm using to apply the ink through the stencil onto my cardstock. So I'm going to get myself set up here, and from here I can decide which portion of the stencil I want to stencil onto my cardstock. I could do just a corner, I could do a half, I could do almost all of the design. I'm going to position it just a little bit around half here. Now I can hold this in place with my hand if I wanted to, or if I was very confident. I can also use the low tack tape, and I think I'll do that in this case, and just secure this in place so that stencil isn't going to go running away anywhere. Now, with the design coming close to the edge of the stencil, I may want to also position a little bit of tape here, just in case my brush goes over the edge there. So that'll be a bit of a mask. Then I'm going to take my ink and apply it onto my brush. Now what I like about the Hunky Dory ink pads, not only are the colors really nice, but you also have a raised ink pad, which means that it's easy to get the ink onto the blending brush. So from here, I'm just going to gently but firmly apply the ink right through the stencil. And you can use firm, even pressure. You can use a strong pressure if you really want to get a lot of ink on there. I tend to build up the color. I like to go in with a lighter approach and then add more ink as I wish. And then that way I can make sure that I can control that color application a little bit more. And you may decide you want some areas of the design to have more color or stronger color. And you may want to have, for example, the edges being softer. So you can make that decision for whatever design you are creating. Of course, you can use just one color, as I'm doing here. You can also use multiple colors. You can combine them, you can layer them, you can create sort of a rainbow effect if you want. This is just such an easy technique and provides so many different design options. So, okay, I've got my ink on here, and make sure to put the lid back onto my my ink pad, and then I'm going to gently pull off my tape. You can get a lot of use out of these little pieces of tape, so I generally save them. And then from here, I'm going to lift up my stencil rather than sliding it off, and you can see my design here. Now from here, when it's time to clean up, on my craft mat, I can just take a baby wipe or a damp cloth and clean that up. Same thing with my stencil. I can take my baby wipe and kind of clean this off. I can also just run this under the kitchen sink and under the kitchen faucet and then clean that ink off. It comes off really easily. But here you can see the beautiful definition on here. I've got some darker areas, some lighter areas, just so many different options for this. Now on the front of my card, the design is a lot more subtle. So although I've used the same ink color and about the same intensity, you can see that you're just able to get so many different effects just depending on the ink color, how much intensity you use, and of course what you're stenciling onto, whether you're going for a tone-on-tone look or something with a little more contrast to it. So once the ink was dry on here, and it doesn't take very long at all, then I added my ephemera focal on top. I've also added the rub-ons on top of where that stenciling is. So then on the card inside, I have some lightly patterned paper, just lining the entire inside. I've got a few ephemera pieces and the Happy Birthday Dazzle message. Our final project today is a tag in a bag, one of my favorite paper crafts to make, and I think one that works really nicely with the pattern papers and our ephemera in today's collection. So to create this project with the bag as well as the tag that goes inside, of course I am using the tag in a bag cutting die set. And inside here you'll have the bag shape as well as the tag. So running these through your die cutting machine will give you the two components you need. So let's start with the bag, and you can see here this is what the shape will look like when you die cut it. You'll have not only the outside edge, you'll also have this really cool scalloped design up here at the top. You'll also have your score lines indicated on here, so that makes it really easy to fold this up. So what you'll do is simply flip it over and then fold in each side as well as the bottom flap. Now you may find it comes in handy to use that bone folder, the same one you used for your rub-ons, to simply crease those lines and make sure you get a nice crisp fold there. Now one thing to notice, and you'll see here on my sample, that I've got both sides of my cardstock showing on here. So when you're choosing your paper to create your folder from or your pocket from, you'll want to make sure that whatever is on the other side of your paper, whatever is going to show up here, is a portion that you do want to have showing. So here, this is the paper that I've used for my bag, and you'll notice that up here at the top, I've got just a little portion of this script showing, or this text on here, which is what I wanted. So that comes across really nicely, but just something to keep in mind when you're choosing your paper. Now on my bag, I've also added a rub-on up here at the top, and I have a strip of pattern paper wrapped around the outside of the bag. And then I've simply decorated it with the airplane ephemera and the word uncle. I've also got some tickets on here, and the tickets are fussy cut from this sheet. Now you could use this entire sheet as your background, but of course you can also snip out some of those individual elements and add them to your project, as I've done here. Now for the tag, I've die cut the shape from this sheet of pattern paper, which already has the planes as part of the design. So when choosing my area of the paper, I've just taken that die and kind of played around with some of the various portions of the design before securing this down with some of that hunky-dory tape and then running it through my die cutting machine. So from here, I didn't have to add a whole lot. I did put a rub-on up here at the top corner, and then I've added the word thanks, that dazzle word on there. And I have done some inking around the outside edge with the mustard ink pad. Up at the top, I've got a little bit of jute twine, and this is an embellishment that I use quite a lot because I love the touch of softness that adds without adding a lot of bulk. And you've got a lot of different colors in here. And that is our final project of the day today. And a big thank you to our friends at Arden for this gorgeous collection of pattern papers, rub-ons, and ephemera pieces. It was so much fun to work with. And a special thanks to you for joining me today. We're really glad you're here, and we're happy you're a part of our Paper Wishes family. Do feel free to leave a comment. We love to hear what you think. Each item can be purchased separately, and you can see them below. However, we've also bundled them into a creative money saver just for you. For the money saver, just see this webisode on paperwishes.com. And if you're watching us on YouTube, have a look in the description box below this video. You'll find a link that will take you to our Paper Wishes webisodes page, and you can see everything I just mentioned. If you enjoyed our video today, we'd really appreciate a thumbs up. It helps people to find our channel. And don't forget to subscribe. We create 3 to 5 videos each week, so there's always something fun to inspire your creative spirit.